Shelby Township Beautification Awards are an annual contest that are held by the Beautification Committee, and we tried to find and spotlight the most beautifully landscaped homes in the township. Well, criteria is mainly beauty and appeal. And we want to look at the front yard and the backyard, the side yard, but we want color, we want neatness is very important, and we want homeowner involvement. We're really not looking for professionally landscaped homes.
My mom passed away when I was 19, and her father was a horticulturalist who lived in Scotland, and I never met him. And I don't know if that's where I get my love for gardening from, but she was a decent gardener. She didn't spend a ton of time in the garden. It was just, you know, geraniums and pops of color here and there. I don't remember spending hours with my mom in the garden, but I don't know if that's where my kind of love comes through my grandfather. I don't know. I'm kind of pulling at that, thinking that might be fun to do that. But like I said, I never got to meet him because he was in Scotland and, you know, before my time. So I'm kind of thinking that's, I'll take that as a little heritage thing. The front of my house has a lot more sun than the back, so I can grow different kinds of things up front, which I enjoy. However, I also suffer from MS, and I'm not allowed to raise my body temperature, which is kind of a joke, but so I can't spend as much time up front as I would like to just because of the heat and the body changes in temperature. But I find it easier to grow stuff in the front because of the sun conditions versus when I don't have the sun in the backyard. But yeah, the plants up front are very different than in the backyard. Well, people say you should have a plan and kind of plot it out on paper. I've never once done that. I just kind of throw things in the ground, and if they grow, great, and if they don't, then I try something else. So I'm more of a hit or miss kind of a gardener. I'm not so technical like a lot of people are. I mean, maybe I should be, but if I like the plant, I'm gonna give it a try. My problem in this backyard is that it is so terribly dense shade that I can't grow a lot of things because of the lack of sun. And there's, like right now, a lot of plants in my driveway versus where they should be in the garden, but they need more sun, so I have to take them out and let them sunbathe for a while till I can bring them back and put them where I want them in the backyard garden. So I rotate stuff around like that. I've had a lot of difficulties in the garden this year with the deer. I love the deer, and they come in the wooded area behind me all the time, and I'm happy to see them. And we're not so happy to see them this year. They have eaten everything down to the ground. So I've had very few blooms that stayed alive. Everything right now is covered in chicken wire, trying to deter them from eating my things. So that's been a real discouraging part of gardening this year. But you run into that every year. In the spring we had an awful lot of rain. That was discouraging because things kind of rotted out really quickly that don't normally. And then the deer came along, and the one deer comes so often to my house, I've named her Daphne. So Daphne comes and the dogs try to keep her away, thank heaven, but she has eaten stuff right down to the ground. But they're hungry. They're being displaced, and we know that, so they have to eat something. I just wish it wasn't my flowers. I just like to get my hands dirty and dig in the dirt and see what progresses. I don't know, it's comforting to me. I like to be in the garden. I love to be outside. During season, I'm probably out here 6 hours a day, plugging away at stuff. And if I have something special coming up, I've been fortunate to have wedding showers or graduation parties, those kind of things in the garden. So at those times, I spend a ton of time out here primping and making sure everything looks as pristine as possible. So. I love birdhouses, so when we go out of town and travel, I try to find something from wherever we're at to add to my garden. So I have stuff over there that's from Traverse City. I have stuff from Europe that I've purchased and brought back. Those kinds of things keep me interested. I like little whimsical things in the garden. In the way back in my garden, there's also a section called Central Bark, and that's designated to the dogs, although my yard is dog friendly, so they can go wherever they choose. But Central Bark got a lot of dog figures in it and play space for them, things that they can play on, that kind of thing, so I like to have that as well. I have a new section to my garden which I started 2 years ago, and it has finally come into its own this summer. I'm pretty excited about it. It's called the Friendship Garden, and it's for my friends who aren't with me anymore. So I have that over there, and I had a friend of mine do the artwork for the sign. And another friend of mine actually routed the sign from the artwork, and then my husband made the frame to put up. And then I have little rocks that have each of my friends' names on them that aren't here anymore. It's really important to me, and my friends mean a lot to me, as they do to anybody. But I've tried to get little clips of plants from their gardens to add to my friendship gardens. I've not been so successful with that. The rocks are, something I can control. But I do like that I have different plants from my friends that I can continue to grow and nurture. And so I like that nurturing kind of thing.
Oh, I was so excited. I've been wanting to win the Hall of Fame for many years, so I was thrilled when I got the phone call that I did finally win. My grandmother had a farm, so I spent most of my summers on a farm growing up, and we always had a big vegetable garden and mostly wildflowers, so I think that has a lot to do with it. And then once I owned my first home, I really got into gardening and flowers and just love it. And then out here, when we moved in, there was no gardens at all. So we put all these in, and I just love walking out in the garden every day and working in the garden. Well, at the front, we put in a split rail fence, and I have perennials out there, and I put in annuals every year with a lot of bright color, so there's a lot of nice street appeal. And then we later added in a swing area with ground cover and more flowers and color, and I have an old bicycle out there. And then the front of the house too, lots of color. I have knockout roses in addition to some perennials and bright annuals. And then on this side of the house, I've got vegetable garden along with roses. I love roses, so I've got about 20 rose bushes, which are a challenge. And then I have Nicotiana nearby, and then a lot of perennials on the side. So the backyard, we put in a limelight hydrangea tree probably 5-6 years ago. We had a previous weeping cherry there, so the hydrangea is beautiful with lots of big white blossoms. And then I have annuals all through the backyard. We have a huge maple in the back, where it's always tough for the grass to grow under these huge trees because of the roots. So we put in another bed with ground cover and ferns, and then I have annuals all at the back of my yard, all around our patio. And then the other side of the yard is mostly perennials, and I have some rose bushes there too. So I pretty much have something completely all around my house, and like I say, every day I'm either working in the yard or I walk through and pick flowers or just enjoy it all, smell the flowers. I think it's, like, wow, look at the beautiful color, that there's color everywhere, and also coordination of colors. Because like up front, I have marigolds, and I put coleus in with it. Makes a nice combination, so people comment about that a lot. But I think the big pop of color and a neat yard, carefully groomed. My significant other does all the maintenance here, and he has built all our flower beds, raised beds, fencing, anything at all. He's done all that. So I think just, a very nice groomed yard and just lots of color everywhere that all all blends well. I think most gardeners know this, like I make all my flower pots, you know, buy the annuals, you know, in the small pots and then make my large pots. So instead of having a heavy pot full of dirt, we fill the bottom of the pots with water bottles or the old plastic pots. And then I use the black screening that you would put down for like mulch or whatever. I put a sheet of that black screening on top of the bottles and then put my dirt in the pot, so it's not so heavy. So that's something partly learned along the way and figured out myself. It's a big stress reliever and just the enjoyment of looking at the flowers, and I love to cut the flowers and bring them in, put them in a vase. I retired this year, so I was able to spend a lot more time in my yard, probably 4 to 8 hours a day at the beginning of the season, May and June, and then less after that, just maintenance. But I just love having my hands in the dirt, but being able to cut the flowers and bring them in, or just we sit out on our patio most evenings, and I just love looking at all the color and then enjoy the fruits of the vegetables, and so that brings a lot of pleasure to me.
Well, I think it's the spring with the warmer temperatures, and you get more color in the yard, and it kind of motivates you to get out here. And I'm not a winter person, so the longer I can spend outside, the better. Well, when people pull up, I want it to be like a complete picture with a lot of different variety plants and big mature trees that have special bark on them, and you know, a lot of plants that bloom at different times of the year. You know, so you always have color in the yard. A lot of rocks. I got a lot of rocks in my yard. And basically, I try to get some yard art too to kind of mix things up a little bit. I have more perennials than annuals. It's a lot cheaper that way, but I've been kind of leaning a little bit towards annuals because you get blooms that keep going all year long instead of, you know, blooming for 3 weeks and then you just have the plant. But even if they do that, the plants that I have, the leaves still look good, you know, so you get like a variety of different shapes and colors of leaves. Every spring, I get a couple truckloads of compost and I put some next to each plant, and you mix it in the soil. You know, you don't want to go too deep, but you mix it in the soil, and that's what the plants eat. So it's kind of like you're feeding them, you know, and it's a slow release type of fertilizer, so it lasts all summer long. And that's my main secret, I think, is the compost. You always want to have a lot of compost in the soil because it keeps the soil moist, and the same with the mulch that you put on top. If you put enough mulch on top, it'll keep it moist underneath, and that's what the plants need to get through the heat of the summer. So it kind of extends, you know, out until late summer, early fall. And basically that's my main trick. It's the dirt and the water and the mulch. The big work for me is the spring. That's when, like I said, you got to get truckloads of stuff and you got to put it out. But as far as cutting everything down, I do a lot of that in the fall, just so it makes it one less thing you got to do in the spring because there's so much other stuff you have to do. So when you do cut it down, sometimes I'll put like dried leaves on some of the stuff, and it keeps it protected from the cold. And if you can get ahead of the game with any shortcuts, it's a good idea to do it because you will be busy in the spring if you have a real big yard and a lot of plants. But I'm not a big fan of winter, so as soon as I can get outside in the more color and green that is around me, I think it makes me a lot happier than seeing nothing but gray and black and white. So I kind of think bears have the right idea when they climb in a hole for 5 months and don't come out. But that's mainly what it is. I really like to surround myself with beauty, and it makes me and my whole family happy.
I like everything to be beautiful, and I like to experiment with different plants. So every year there's something different going on, and it's just fun to see what's going to happen. I do a mixture of perennials, annuals. Annuals are for the color. The perennials are only a few weeks each, and then I have tropicals. And the tropicals also have their season, but they just provide a lot of beauty where they are. I put in the arborvitaes a few years ago. They give you privacy. This neighborhood doesn't allow fences, so it's perfect. I have a very large backyard, so I like to have a place for the children to play volleyball, badminton, set up a tent, have a big party. It's just a very nice private resort area. Well, there's always weeds to pull. And you have to pull the weeds not because they aren't beautiful, because they can be beautiful, but because they take the nutrients away from what it is you want to grow. So you get out, you start to weed, and then you see something that needs to be pruned, and you need to see something that needs to maybe be moved. It's not doing well where it is. And you're outside, and the birds are singing, and I've planted a hummingbird garden, so I'll be out there and I just stop and I watch the hummingbirds for a while. It's just a beautiful place to be, especially when the weather's perfect. I think if you want to be a really good gardener, you should take the Master Gardener course. You learn a whole lot about a lot of different kinds of plants, how to keep your lawn nice, how to not use as many chemicals as perhaps if you're hiring it out, and what to use when you absolutely need to. I have a river-safe backyard, so I have a rain garden, and I very sparingly use chemicals. There's nothing greater than sitting in your backyard and seeing a beautiful place and enjoying all of the natural things around you. It's peaceful, gets your spirit down. You know, you could do your yoga in the backyard. It's just a very nice, quiet place to be and enjoy every day.